That's good music. Thanks, buddy. There you go. Oh, man. Whew. That was probably like the heaviest intro I've ever had. If everybody would just stand up for 1 second, if you would all stand up. If you got in this morning, so if you arrived here at the hotel this morning, go ahead and sit down. So if you were, that's some of you already, okay. So I live in Vegas currently because I'm a compulsive gambler. And I saw there was a cute little casino downstairs. That was really nice. So if you were back to your hotel room last night by 9 o'clock, go ahead and sit down. Couple of you, okay. I'm just gauging the energy level here when we're going to fall asleep. 10 o'clock, if you're back to your room by 10 o'clock, go ahead and sit down. I like this. 11 o'clock. I like this. It's okay. Midnight. I like okay, I'm just going to close my eyes here. Anytime after midnight. Whew, all right. So I know where we're at now. Thank you, guys. I hope you had fun. Thanks for supporting the MGM Casino. We appreciate that. All right, I want to start with a bet. Since we are in Vegas, I wanted to bet Dustin that I could do more burpees than he could. No, there's no way I could win that bet. Oh, shoot. Amber, behind the camera case is a $100 bill. It's the videographers. Joe, you ready for a bet, man? Let's do it. Come on up, Joe. How many of you are decent multitaskers? Couple of you. How many of you have your email open constantly? Like you get the pop-ups on your screen when things happen. Okay, we call that multitasking. I want to bet you, let's see, and then Amber's got that. We'll need the clock, Amber, as well in a minute. Joe, I want to bet you $100 that you neither you nor anyone else here can multitask worth a darn. If you win, I'll give you the $100. If you lose, Lexi gets the $100 because it was her genius that got all this put together. It's going to be pretty easy. Do you know your ABCs, Joe? You seem like a smart guy. We had dinner last night. Yeah. And you know your 1, 2, 3s? Yep. Okay. So here's what I want you to do. I'm going to skip ahead a couple slides. We're going to get to this. We'll come back to these in a second. I want to make sure we're doing something fun right now. So what we're going to have you do, Joe, is we're going to time you writing the letters A through Z and the numbers 1 through 26. Right, except there's 24, isn't there? I screw this up. So we're going to time this. You're going to write A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Everyone else do this as well. So you have papers on your desk. Everyone, we're going to time this. Don't start yet. No head starts, or it doesn't work. And now this might seem silly. This might seem like, geez, we brought Jarvis here to do a kindergarten exercise. Trust me, this will illustrate a point. Amber, who's our podcast producer, has a timer. Amber, I'll hold the remote because I know how that one works. So what we're going to do is we're going to time you writing down the alphabet, A through Z, and then underneath that you're going to write the corresponding numbers, right? Is everybody clear on that? So you'll write A, B, C, D, E, F, G, et cetera to the end, and then 1, 2, 3 until you get to the end. And then once you get to the end, you're going to look at your time, and you're going to write down your time, and then check for any errors. You don't have to confess the errors. I won't ask. We're going to write down time. So, Joe, are you clear on what you're going to do? Yeah. The easel's a little wobbly. If it falls over, that's on you, not me. This is Vegas, or this is a casino. It's rigged. Okay, Amber, we're going to see if this works. Everybody's got the drill? Nobody's confused? If you are, here we go. So I'm going to go. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. TUV. Perfect. All right, Joe's time was 37. Joe, write down 37. Well done. Everybody got to their end? If you're still going, we can give you a few more seconds. Okay, if you're not done yet, I can't help you. There's another class. There was Hooked on Phonics was down the hall. Okay, let's see if I can reset this. Okay, Joe, what we're going to have you do this time, I'm going to tear this one off. We're going to prove your multitasking abilities. So what you're all going to do is write down the exact same thing, except this time you're going to go A1, B2, C3, D4, etc. Right? So you're going to end up writing the same number of characters, which should, in theory, take the same amount of time, right? It's the same number of pen strokes. So you'll do A1, B2, C3, kind of should look like something like this, all the way until you get to the end. And then look up at your time. So, Joe, you good? You're clear? Yeah, let's do it. All right, ready? On your mark, get set, Go. Oops. Give him a head start. If the clock will work. Joe, hang on a sec. Oh, there it goes. Keep going. Oh, wait, Joe, you got to do the numbers too at the same time. D4, E5. There you go. No, it's okay, man. It's okay. It's just the alphabet and just numbers. So your financial advisor should be fine. $100 on the line. Per number. Amber, we need music for this next time, like a high pressure music. The alphabet song backwards. All right, Joe, we got it. Let's see, we have 1 minute and 3 seconds. Anybody else still finishing up? Everybody got it? Okay. Joe, you didn't beat your time. It actually took you twice as long to write the same number of characters as it did to just write them straight through. So if you'd give the $100 to Lexi, that'd be great. If you want to do any other betting later, we can. So you lost. Lexi wins. But you have to deliver it to Lexi.
All right, where's Lexi?
Back there.
Okay, got it.
Joe, thanks for being here. So Joe and I had dinner together last night. That's why he got to earn that. Thanks, Amber. Okay. Did anybody else come anywhere close to their first time? How was your error rate? None, and you're close to the first time. Good thing I got Joe on stage. Would have ruined it if I had got one of you on stage. Here's the thing that happens, and Henry Ford proved this over 100 years ago. When we jump between tasks, we kill our efficiency. Absolutely kill our efficiency. And so all the time I meet with advisors, I have an advisory practice myself, we'll talk about it in a minute, and they say, Jarvis, I don't have enough time. And then I look and say, well, how are you running your practice? How are you running your life? And what we find ourselves doing is jumping back and forth. This is why I'm such an advocate of surge meetings. Let's focus on a task instead of trying to jump between them. Now, I had fun teasing with Joe, and he was a good sport. Joe runs an incredible practice. He and Monique run this great practice. We got to talk about it last night. But he, like all of us, struggles with how do I manage my time? How do I serve all my clients effectively, let alone how do I grow? So let's rewind just a little bit. I'll tell you a quick story. So when my first edition of my book came out, my son Calvin, who's 12, he helps ship all the books, which is kind of like his paper out today. And he sees the first box of books that get delivered to my house, and he says, very seriously, no jokes, he says, Dad, why don't you look this good all the time? He was really curious. He thought I was holding out on the family. He's like, Dad, your skin complexion looks great. Those wrinkles, he's really going to town. It's like the wrinkles, the bags under your eyes are gone. Like, Dad, you should dress like this more often. And so we had a lesson on Photoshop and how Photoshop works. But then I had to kind of think back. This is a picture of me circa like 2007. That's my dad in the other picture. That was a snippet from a postcard, circa like early 2000s for those of us that were playing back then. The big thing at that time was to have a personal brochure. Websites were still a little bit of a newer thing. Some of you, I see some guys laughing, they remember this. There was a gentleman by the name of Peter Montoya, no relation to the guy in Princess Bride, Amigo Montoya. And he was convinced that what you should do is have these beautiful brochures that you then mail out in bulk, and clients will flock to you. I see some heads nodding. Some of you remember this. So I thought, I was only in the industry a couple of years, I thought, boy, that's really it. That will solve all my problems. I'll get to be the one on stage talking. I had planned on so I borrowed money on a credit card because I had no money at the time. And we bought tens of thousands of these. Tens of thousands of these. I kid you not, a month later, there was a change at our broker dealer. We had to update our disclosure on the brochure. So what I think, I just paid for tens of thousands. So we carefully put labels, because that's what really makes a brochure look professional, is a label on top of that. Then we discovered they wouldn't run through our printer, so we had to have them custom printed. And then we discovered that they couldn't go normal postcard mail. So the first group we sent out to our clients to tell them how proud we were, all got delivered postage due. Was not my best day. It was not my best day. In fact, for years, at the bottom there, you can see a little snippet from some of my early financials. We were losing a lot of money, which isn't sustainable. I know you're financial advisors. I just want to paint that picture. That was all on credit cards. But for years, I would come to work every morning, and my morning ritual was, how do I quit? Now, I was so deep in credit card debt that I would have had to bankrupt out, and I would have had to move my family, my wife and I and our 2 young kids, in with my mother-in-law, which she's great. That is not top on my priority list. So I'd spend the first hour of my day thinking, all right, how do I quit? How do I quit? I could never figure it out, and so I went back to work. Circa 2008, my dad, who I'd been working with for 5 years, he got really sick. He's better now. He got really sick and had to retire overnight. So in the middle of the financial crisis, as everything was going to heck, I got to call all our clients and say, hey, by the way, Dad retired. And one client specifically said, it sounds like the rats are jumping off the ship that's sinking. I said, I don't know about that, but I'm still here. So when that happened, I went to work the next day. My mom was our office manager, and you should never work with family. That's a different presentation. And I said to Mom, well, Dad is sick. He had to retire. We can't work anymore. I'm quitting. I'm finally going to quit. Mom says, famous, I'll always remember this. I can picture the room. She says, well, you can quit if you want to, but I'm going to keep going. Okay, Mom, let's do this thing. So all of the things I was afraid to do previously, and I talked to several of you, you're making some of the same things. The clients that weren't good fit clients that I needed to graduate, the people who I wasn't charging fees to that needed to pay a fee, my surge meetings, all these things that I was afraid to do. I thought if there was ever a time to do it, I should do it now, because I'm going to go out of business either way, and all I'll have to show for it is these darn postcards, or it's going to turn the ship around. And turn the ship around it did. Let's see, that's the disclaimer stuff. Last year, so I have my personal practice in the Seattle, Washington area in a Metro Federal Way. It's just south of the airport. So we did just a couple dollars shy of $2 million gross, about $1.05 million net. And when I mean about, that's exactly. I have myself, there's a junior advisor, and I have 2 support team members. Now, for some of you, these are really big numbers. For some of you, these are numbers you already did this year. I did this while only working about 100 days in the office. And I don't mention that to say like, wow, I've really figured this out, but really to share for you what's possible. So inside the cover of your book is a Post-it note, or there should be. If there's not, we have some spare Post-it notes. Inside the cover of the book is your Post-it note. My son Calvin, who commented that I should look better all the time, stuck those in there carefully. What I would like you to do is put your business plan on this Post-it note. So I hate complicated things. Like I really love simplicity. That's why I love one-page financial plans. I like my business plan to have 3 bullet points. I like it to have what my goal is for gross and net revenue. So net would be whatever pays out to you, right? After all of your expenses. So not what comes off the grid, but what you put in your bank account. Days off, and whatever impact thing you're solving for. Sometimes I meet advisors and they say, listen, what I'd love to do is visit every NFL stadium in the country. Awesome. Or I want to golf 100 days a year. Whatever that impact piece is you. It's different for everybody. But I want you to put those 3 bullet points for 2025. So roughly 3 years from now. No Post-it note. If there's a Post-it note missing, I think there's a stack of them on the table. I paid my kids 50 cents for each book they did, so I'll take that back out of their alliance. What's that?
How much did the autograph worth?
Didn't get autographed either?
No, how much is it worth?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. My kids can't believe anybody wants it autographed. I'm actually going to take the extra name tags. I'm going to dig them out of the garbage at the end of this and take them home just to show my kids. So just save it to set them off the side. So write down what it is you want to see at 2025. Now, there's a lot of studies on goals and productivity. Like Dustin, I love to read a ton. And there's this idea that the best goals are the ones that have about a 50-50 probability in your mind of achieving it. So if you say, hey, this is a slam dunk goal, it's not really a goal, it's just what's inevitable. Also, if you say, hey, this is an impossible goal, I'd have to win the lottery to get it, also not a good goal. So we want this postcard to be enough that it scares you. In fact, if it doesn't scare you, let me share you with a joke I use in every client presentation. I always say, clients, I'm really glad that you're here today. If at any point you get bored and you don't think this is a good presentation, the exit is by the bathrooms. And so if you would feign like you need to use the bathroom, I won't feel so bad. You can just leave from there. So same goes for you. But if your Post-it note doesn't scare you, we've got something wrong there. We need to think bigger, right? This needs to be a number where you say, boy, I think I could do this, but I'm not quite sure how it is. In fact, if it doesn't scare you, like I said, you can head out the back. If it does scare you, what I would ask for you to do, that's my countdown timer, is for the next little bit while we're working together, I would ask for you to suspend disbelief. So some of you may be thinking, wow, this Jarvis guy, I think he's got it figured out. Other guys might be thinking, I don't know who this guy is, who invited him here, he's got a terrible haircut, whatever it is. But just for the next hour that we have together, suspend your disbelief. Anything you say, hey, that couldn't work in my practice, you can always go back to that belief. But just for now, just for the next hour, say, what if it did work in my practice? Now, I had asked Dustin when he invited me to come out if I could have 11 or 12 hours. He said, absolutely not. You can have 60 minutes, and he took 5 of those. And so there's going to be more than we can possibly cover. But what we'll do is we'll have some Q&A time at the end. I brought Amber, our podcast producer, who can answer questions for you as well. So let's go into this. There are 5 things I hear from advisors constantly. And there's 5 things I heard from myself as I was growing my practice. But what I would love to hear from you is, as you look at that Post-it note, what comes to your mind? When you say, wow, I don't know how I'm going to get there, what are some things? Because this is our discussion. Like, we're fellow financial planners here. We can go anywhere we want with this. I've got my points that we can cover, but I'd love to cover whatever's coming to mind for you as you look at that Post-it note. Capacity. Tell me a little bit more about capacity. Sure. Okay, so for those of you that didn't hear that, so how bullet point 2, days off, competes with bullet point number 1, revenue made, and the general capacity, how could I serve that many more clients? Right, because I would really be willing to bet if I looked at any of your calendars, they're all full. Right, like no matter how many clients an advisor has, their calendar is always full. It's Parkinson's law, right? An activity will take as much time as is allocated to it. Okay, what else comes to mind? Capacity is a good one, thank you. Just capacity? Process? Tell me a little bit more about process. Yeah, that's a great point. If you're doing a manual lift on every single one, if every client that comes in, you're building a financial plan from scratch, right? You'll never get there. That's a great one. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Client acquisition.
Sure. Here.
The opposite of that, graduating client.
Graduating. Some of us have had that discussion already this morning. Everybody knows that graduating clients is code for firing clients, right? We're on the same page here. This isn't like we're going to start a degree program. Please.
Mine's probably the same thing, like segmentation, like which clients do I want to work with?
Sure. Segmentation, perfect. Please.
Team, building the right team.
Yeah. How many of you are just an army of one? It's just you, no assistant, no team member? Couple people. Joe, come on.
I'm a team.
You're not his assistant.
But we're a team.
You're like his babysitter. I met Joe. I'm sorry, Monique. No, you guys are a great team. we had dinner, we had drinks last night together. But it's probably the last time. They're like, forget this guy. Okay, team, thank you. Anything else? Please.
Delegation.
Sure, that's a great one. Fees. Oh, I love fees. That was the person I paid earlier today to make sure that came up. Anything else? In the back, please.
Finding comfort. Being comfortable is not the most dangerous.
Yeah, that's a super dangerous one. Please.
Prioritization.
Yeah, prioritization. Okay, anything else we missed? Okay. There's a lot of ways to tackle this. Here's ultimately my secret to success. I'm really good at a couple of things, and I don't do anything else. A lot of you mentioned problems with clients that aren't a good fit or clients that need to be graduated. Time management, for example, if you had my cell phone number and you called me and you said, hey, Matt, can I come and meet with you Sunday at 2 a.m.? I'd probably say yes. Because I love meeting with people. I love seeing people. It's my favorite thing. Therefore, I do zero scheduling. So if you call Colleen at my office, who's been my office manager for 11 years now, if you call Colleen and you say, hey, I want to meet with Jarvis Sunday at 2 a.m., she'll say, great news. Matthew sees clients on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Which of those days would work best for you? And they'd say, but I can only see him on a Friday. And she'd say, I get that. Great news. Matthew spends Fridays with his family. Would you like to see him at Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? Every time. Now, your schedule might be different. I never see clients on Mondays. I never see clients on Fridays. And actually, I only do client meetings one week a month outside of search. Now, that may or may not be the right schedule for you. The key is to be intentional. See, by doing that, that gives me Mondays and Fridays. Fridays is just personal time. Gives me Mondays to literally work on my business. We all know the cliche, right? Work on your business, not in your business. But when does that possibly happen? It happens when I say there's days that I'm not going to meet with clients. Now, somebody always asks, what if there's an emergency? Yes, of course, at some point there's going to be an emergency, right? A client passes away or something like that. Otherwise, I am dictating when meetings are, which, by the way, every other professional is that way. Even if I go to the Ritz-Carlton, if there's not rooms available, they're not going to make a room for me in back, right? Or if I go to the airport, I go up to the Delta and I say, listen, I'm an elite MVP member. Could you guys fly out here 30 minutes early? They're going to say, no, Mr. Jarvis, thanks for being an elite whatever member. The flight leaves at 2:15. And so the first thing you've got to do is take control of your schedule, but also start watching for things that you're not very good at. Now, if you're saying, well, where do I possibly find a team member? It doesn't even have to be a team member, right? You guys all have access to bookings. Dustin, is that right? We use Calendly. Bookings is like the same thing. So if you get my Calendly link, when we do Surge, we send the invite to all clients, and it's blocked out. Here's when my meetings are. So we don't even have a discussion, what about 2:15? It's just already on there. So there's so many things that you're making decisions about, probably the wrong decisions, that need to be eliminated from your calendar. Let's look a little bit more on this one. I'm going to skip this. Oh, here's an example of my Surge calendar. So this would be what we call a mini Surge. So like I said, I do client meetings on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This is an actual snippet from my calendar at some point. You could probably figure out when that was. And that's how I do my meetings. So they're blocked on the calendar for 45 minutes. There's a 30-minute block in between them. They typically go for an hour, never a minute past an hour. At 5 minutes before the hour, Colleen knocks on the door, comes in the Zoom meeting, and I smile, and I say, Colleen, thank you so much for keeping me on schedule. And I turn to the clients, and I say, I'm so glad I have Colleen. She keeps me on schedule. And then we wrap up the meeting and move on. So the more that you can streamline, the more that you can systematize, the faster it will go. Questions on that? None? Quiet group? Quiet group? Okay, please.
Do the Mondays and Fridays count towards the 180?
If I'm so my rule for days in the office, any day I open my laptop is a day in the office. For me.
So, sorry, your 180, is that Monday and Friday times 52 plus a few? Or?
Well, plus a lot, but yeah. Yeah, so I take a lot of time out of the office. That's just one of my intentions. So, for example, last year we spent 2 weeks floating down the Grand Canyon with my family. A lot of fun. Highly recommend it. I take a lot of time out of the office. That's just something that's a real priority for me. Now, I started taking time out of the office once I had already hit a level in my practice where I was doing pretty good. Sometimes I'll meet advisors who'll say, Jarvis, my practice is just like yours. I never work. That's not quite just like mine. You've got one piece, right? You've got to earn that other piece. Great question. By the way, I track days off, so I'm a big fan of this idea. Anything you measure will improve. So I keep a wall calendar, and every time I take a day off, I write an X through that, and I write down the number. So like day 7, day 8, day 9. I want to be aware of that. Whatever it is I'm trying to accomplish, I want to actually track that down. Other questions about scheduling, please?
When you go back in-office days, does that mean you have like a 26-hour day?
A 26-hour day? No, I'm an 8 to 5 guy. I never stay at the office past 5 o'clock. And that's what we call a forcing mechanism. Dustin, please. Oh, I'm sorry. He was asking if I work 26-hour days. That's how I'm able to do it in 100 days. It's a great question. No, I have the same 24 hours that you have, right? We all do. I'm an 8 to 5 kind of guy. Those are just some forcing mechanisms. I don't do mornings super well, so 8 o'clock is a great start time for me, and I don't want to be in the office past 5 p.m. What we run into is this phenomenon called playing office. So we all spend a lot of time playing office. I define playing office as any time I'm not working directly with a client or prospect. So when I'm spending time reading the Wall Street Journal, which is one of my vices, in fact, quick side note here, I can't have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal because I will spend hours reading it, feel like I'm doing market research or whatever that is. So I can't have a subscription. I still compulsively go to the Wall Street Journal site at least 3 times a day. All I can do is read the headlines though because I don't have a subscription. I'm just being real honest with y'all. Like, we're all advisors. That's just one of my things, right? And so to make sure that I don't spend endless time on the wall. I also don't have any pop-ups or alerts or notifications, because as soon as one of those pops up, I'm like a little kid. I'm like, ooh, candy. And then now I'm reading emails. So I have a team member who goes through all of my emails. Actually, I have 2 different team members in 2 different companies, and deletes out everything that I don't need to see. Anything I need to see goes into a folder called Action Mat. In fact, none of my clients have a direct email access to me. We have a client's email account for our team. All client correspondence goes through that. Why? Because just like I don't answer the phones or open the mail, I don't need to be the one responding to every email. Please, and then we'll come back over here.
Can you go back to prior to getting to this, how you got your practice to where it is today, and what your schedule looked like prior to this?
It looked like me in the office all the time, not actually doing any work. Like most of us. So it was me. I'd get in at 8 o'clock and I would stay until late at nights, and I would work every single day of the week, and I would never take any time off. Because I had in my mind this idea that if I pulled this lever long enough, never mind that nothing was happening. It's sort of like slot machines downstairs. I thought, man, if I feed enough time into this machine, somehow I'll win. But it wasn't activities that were moving the needle, right? If it's not me talking to a client or talking to a prospect or a center of influence or networking, those were my big channels, it was just me screwing around. And so what I'd find is, like, you know what I need to do? I need to read every possible seminar that any wholesaler has ever presented to me. That's what I need to do. And I'll figure out, I'll rank them, I'll do a ranking system, and then I'll color code them, and then never use them. Please, I'm sorry, here on the second table, ma'am, you had a question.
Sorry, yeah, no, I guess kind of to piggyback off of the question that was asked about what your schedule did look like.
Yeah.
How did you start identifying those activities that you shouldn't have been doing, and who did you give them to?
Yeah, so in 2008, that slide where we were losing all the money, there was 5 people on our team on $300,000 of gross revenue. Now, again, financial advisors, I'll let you do the quick math. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. We actually had someone on our team who one of his primary job duties was to make sure that we always had the latest fact sheets for American funds. Those of us who have played business for a long time, we remember that. So we had a cabinet of American funds fact sheets, and once a week he would double check to make sure we had 10 of each of them. And whatever we were short on, he would go online. This is when you had to order those fact sheets, and he would order them because we thought that was really highest and best use, was to make sure we had 10 of each fact sheet for every fund. I see a couple heads nodding. We remember that. I'm a big advocate, as I mentioned, of Parkinson's Law. So again, Parkinson's Law is an activity will take as much time as is allocated to it. A corollary is your backpack will always be full, or for ladies, your purse will always be full. For gentlemen, your garage will always be overflowing. That's Parkinson's Law. Same goes for your schedule. So when I said, hey, listen, I absolutely will not work Fridays anymore, or back to when we had a terrible practice, 2008 hit, we literally couldn't make payroll, so everybody got laid off except for mom and I. That was a fun family dinner discussion. That's for another day. Then we started realizing there's these things we got to get rid of. We have to quit updating the American funds fact sheets. We have to quit doing one-off spreadsheets for every client. We can't work with clients that aren't a good fit anymore. We can't work with clients that aren't paying our minimum fee. And so it forces you to make those changes. That's the only way I found to be successful, is to force myself into it. For those of you who listen to our podcast, The Perfect RIA, with my good friend and another advisor, Michael Kitces, we're big fans of what we call extreme accountability. Is anybody familiar with extreme accountability? Not Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink, highly recommend that. Extreme accountability is this idea that we all have these things we're afraid to do. Now, you may not call it fear. In your mind, you're saying, I have a perfectly good reason to not do this. I don't want to just pick on Joe. So let's say I met an advisor last night and had dinner with him. I talked to a few of you today sitting. You have clients that are not a good fit for your practice anymore. They were at one time, right? When we were all starting our practices, it was any business we could do. At one time, they were a good fit. Right now, they are not a good fit. How do we know they're not a good fit? This is pretty easy to do. Anybody want to play along? I'll be glad to do somebody specifically, or I can do a hypothetical.
They call you weekly.
They call you weekly? That's a great one. So, sir, your name was? Phil. Phil, do you want to play this game with me real quick? Sure. What did you write down on your postcard on your sticky note for where you wanted your practice to be?
100 days off.
I love it.
That was first.
Yep.
And $1 million in revenue.
Gross? Perfect. Would we all kind of agree this is like a gold star practice here? Like, that's really, I think you've arrived when you've got that point.
Matt, can you repeat the numbers?
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. Keeping me on time. And so he said 100 days off and $1 million gross revenue. So we'd agree that's a phenomenal practice, right? Okay, so if you've got $1 million revenue gross and you're taking 100 days off, how many clients do you think you could have? And or you can do either way. How many clients could you handle? And or what would be the minimum fee for those clients, minimum revenue?
Minimum fee I already do is 1.5%.
What's the minimum they would pay? Like, is it $10,000 or $1 million of assets? Like, how do you decide if a client is a good fit versus they should, like, for example, if a client calls and says, hey, would you help me consolidate my credit card debt? You would probably say, hey, I'm really not a good fit for that, right? Anybody doing credit card debt consolidation? For a fee? I guess I won't do it, even if the fee was enormous. Now, sometimes we laugh at these, right? I have a client, he's a retired cardiologist. Anybody work with medical specialists, right? A couple people. So I will call him Bob. I said, hey, Bob, did you ever do a knee surgery in your career? And he laughed out loud like that was the most absurd thing. And I said, no, Bob, I'm really serious. You went to medical school like every other doctor. You know how to do knee surgeries. Yeah, I did them in my residency. I said, did you ever do knee surgeries during your career? He says, no, absolutely not. All I did was heart surgeries. I'm a heart surgeon, a cardiologist. That's all I ever did. See, as advisors, we start to drift. We say, hey, if it's a money issue, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. No, we have to be like that specialist. In fact, anytime I have a prospect that's not a good fit, maybe their accounts are too small, maybe they need something I can't do, I say, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, I am like a cardiologist. I only do heart surgery. What you need is like a knee surgeon, an orthopedic surgeon. I know another advisor. One of the advantages you have being here in part of the Prudential Network is you know a lot of advisors. I know an advisor who's a good fit for that. So back here, what's the minimum? So 1.5%, I love that, premium fee, premium value. What's like a minimum asset size or minimum annual fee for that person?
So 175 clients at 400,000 and above.
107, that's what you need to get to $1 million? Okay, perfect. So everybody should be doing this in math as well. So 175, does that math that up? Yeah, it probably does. Okay, at 400 minimum. Okay, that's a minimum at 1.5%. Anybody have, by the way, just since we're bouncing around here, concerns about charging 1.5%? Let me tell you the best way to explain fees to clients, prospective clients I've ever found. I learned this one from my good friend, Michael Kitces. I use it every single prospect meeting. Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. Fees in our industry range from 0, though that's kind of a loss leader, to 3%. By the way, 3% is probably a low number. If we go like a fully loaded VA with all the benefits tacked on top of it, so easily over 3%. Fees in our industry range from 0 to 3%. My fee is 1.5%, which is right about in the middle, but I think my value is far in excess of that. Right? See, otherwise prospects come to the meeting, they have no index on fees. They're anchored on whatever they had heard the other day. Maybe they heard 1%, maybe they had called Vanguard and heard 30 bips, maybe they called Schwab and heard free. We all know that's not really free. Maybe they were at a timeshare presentation and were told that they could rent this thing out 700 days a year and they would make money. So we want to always set context. The other thing, somebody mentioned client acquisition. The other just most brilliant thing I learned from a coach, John Barron, I tell this to every prospect, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect, before you pay us $1 in fees or trust us with a penny of your nest egg, I want you to have the information you need to make an educated and informed decision about our practice. Now, great news, Mr. and Mrs. Prospect. You can also use this process to evaluate any other financial advisors you're considering. Now, what have I done there, right? I've taken off so much pressure. I've also now set the stage. Now, imagine this as a consumer. Imagine you went down to the Toyota dealership and the Toyota salesperson, instead of saying Toyota will solve every problem you've ever had, says, you know what, a Toyota may not be the best fit for you. In fact, what we're going to do is go through a process to see if a Toyota is a great fit for you. And by the way, you can use this same process to evaluate a Mercedes or a Chevrolet or whatever the case may be. That person would now be your best friend, right? They would go from a salesperson to a trusted advisor. So we always want to look what I call the prospect process. We always want to look for steps along the way where I can be an assistant, where I can guide them. Now, by the way, I'm stacking the deck in my favor. For example, we give every prospect 10 questions you should ask a financial advisor before hiring them. Do any of the questions ask them about the quality of their haircut? No, of course they don't, because that wouldn't help me at all, right? And so these questions are all things that are going to stack for my favor. Now I'm lost. Where did we end up? We started here. I'm multitasking. I always think, stick to the presentation, and then I love interacting. You've got to do this math to make sure it adds up. So 175 clients at 400,000. Here's where we were. Clients that aren't a good fit. That's where we started. Thank you. Any client, so what's 400,000 at 1.5%? $5,000, $6,000? $6,000, thank you. So what we need to do is go back through, you need to run a list of your clients. See, what we tell ourselves is when I get 175 of these clients, then I'll deal with the clients that are below this. I've not seen your book of business. I would bet, like all of us, there's a big chunk of clients that fall below that. In fact, there's a chunk of clients that fall way below that. In fact, I'd be willing to bet there's a chunk of clients that fall so far below this where it's a stretch to call them clients. Is that right? It's not personal to you. It's all of us. What we need to do is run a list of your clients without their names that have revenue next to it. See, when their names are there, we look and we say, oh, Bob and Sue, I remember Bob and Sue were my third client. And I owe Bob and Sue, I can't ever graduate them. My good friend Benjamin Brandt, he always says, your D client, your lowest client, is someone else's A client. And someone else, where this person who's now a nuisance to you, who's now you feel an obligation to serve, who's not paying you, who's a bullet in the revolver of compliance, right? Their complaint can sink you just as fast as any other complaint. They need to go to somebody who's an A client. By the way, you're helping that advisor out. We all remember grinding out trying to find those first couple clients, and if an advisor had said, hey, listen, I want you to take care of these 10 clients, it really could have made the difference. And so you've got these clients that are not a good fit for your practice anymore. There's another practice that's a better fit for you. As I mentioned, great news being here in the Prudential Network, there's advisors you can refer those to. Justin mentioned that to me last night. You'll actually get an override on that action as well. And so it's a no-lose proposition. So to your point, to get to these 175 clients at 400,000, any client who's paying less than half this amount, so any clients less than $3,000 a year, they need to be given the opportunity to pay that much or go work with another advisor. Okay, this is usually where I have somebody object. So feel free to jump in, don't hold back. Please, thank you.
Is this why you may maybe add additional members to your team?
Question, is this why you add additional members to your team? Here's the trap that we tend to go down. Clients that aren't a good fit for you probably aren't a good fit for your team because your team needs to specialize as well. What's great to do with your team, by the way, if you have team members, is have them run the list with names and no numbers and let them highlight the clients that they hate to hear from. They know better than you do. And those are clients that need to go right away. If your team sees a client's name come up on caller ID or their email in the inbox and they cringe, those people cannot be clients because it's just sucking the life out of your team. Please.
So if you're in a meeting with an A client and they say, hey, my son just graduated college and I'd really love it if you would help him. You're in the meeting, they ask that to you.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Yeah. So the question was that your best client, your very best client refers to the absolute worst person. Their nephew, who's the local drunk, who they want you to help out, right? Isn't that the scenario that kind of happens?
Their son, their children, because nephew I could pass.
Nephew, okay, so it's their child, yeah.
Child,
Anybody ever run into that? Just me? Perfect. Okay, here's the script I use with every client. This is my referral script. At the end of every meeting, I say, Mr. and Mrs. Clients, one of the benefits of working with our team is any family or friends you have, any family or friends that have any kind of money question, they can give me a call and I'll get them pointed in the right direction. See, what happens, we tell clients, hey, listen, if you know anybody like you, well, clients don't know how much money their friends make. And by the way, they don't want their friends to know how much money. So if I say, hey, listen, if you know anybody that has $1 million or more, well, one, I don't know if they have $1 million or more, and I don't want them to know I have $1 million or more, especially if you're dealing with kind of what they call mass affluent, millionaire next door. So I want to make it easy. Same for my centers of influence, right? My accountants, my attorneys, listen, any client that has money questions, I'll be glad to get them pointed in the right direction. So they say, will you talk to my son? My A client says, will you talk to my son, just graduated from college? Love to. Let's schedule a 15-minute call. Not a meeting in my office, not a big thing, a 15-minute call. I'll give them the best advice that I can in 15 minutes. I'll send them a copy of Dave Ramsey's book or whatever book you like to give out, and then I'll say, great news, check back with me in a few years. Right? Just like my niece, I always think, what would my cardiologist clients say? And I'd ask him, I say, did people ever ask you for heart advice? And he said, constantly. Every time I went, I said I was he stopped telling people he was a cardiologist. They'd say, hey, would you check out my heart? He would just say, call 911. Didn't matter what they say. I got this hangnail. You should probably call 911. He was a funny guy, but he says, listen, liability-wise, if I give this guy hard advice on the side, I might as well just hang out my license now. But he would always give him that great advice of call 911. So when your very best client says, will you do knee surgery and you're a cardiologist? The answer is, I would love to point them in the right direction. Now, if you want to do your clients an above and beyond service, you need to have a list of advisors you could refer that to. So if you look through the Prudential Network and you say, oh, I know some advisors who do great college planning, I'll be glad to introduce you. I don't have an obligation to go outside my niche. In fact, I'm doing a disservice when I do that. Please.
How do you, when people ask you about, well, I guess when you're trying to go through that referral process, do you have how do you paint a picture of who you want to work with? Do you have how do you keep it short and simple, and how do you make it really clear what to do, right?
Yeah, the question is, how do I paint a picture of who I like to work with? The furthest I'll go is I like to work with people that are like you. Yeah, because if I start going further, then they have to start doing the qualifications. So for me, for example, I like to work with people that want to retire tomorrow. Like, that's really my perfect person. They call me and they say, hey, Jarvis, I want to retire tomorrow. I say, great news, you're in the right place. So I'll let them know, hey, I work with people that are retired or really close to it, but I won't ever go into numbers because I don't want them to have to qualify it. But again, I don't want them to hesitate. As soon as I add friction points, we talked about this over breakfast, as soon as I add friction points, my referrals go way down. Okay? Please.
I'm interested in the days off, the qualifications, all these things. Would you say that your success is a function of those decisions in the past, or that you grinded like everybody else and now you've arrived and you get to do all this stuff? I think you would say that it's a function of some of those decisions. I'm just curious what your perspective is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so the question was, which came first, the chicken or the egg? We'll take a minute to solve. No. The question was, did I start taking time off before or after I sort of arrived? I was probably approaching $1 million in production before I started taking as much time off. And there's an interesting story there. I would spend Fridays, though, were my prospecting days. And so Mondays were my days, when I was in a real grind mode, Mondays were my day to do all of my personal development, all my research. That's when I'd read the Kitces articles or whatever emails came through from compliance. That's when anything I thought was interesting, I would do all of that on Monday. I'd read all my books, all of that, my case prep for the week. Fridays was a pure prospecting day. In fact, to keep myself from avoiding prospecting, Thursday night I would print my list of people I wanted to call or people I wanted to visit so that Friday morning I wouldn't find myself cruising the internet looking for something to do. And so one of my big lead sources was Center of Influence. I'm very good at getting CPAs to refer me clients. Not many people can do that. I do it really well. And so every Friday I would get to the office at 8 o'clock and I would have the list of the next 10 CPAs I needed to call. And I would call them. And you can read about this in my book. And I would say, Mr. or Mrs. CPA, I have clients that are constantly asking me for a CPA referral. I don't know if they'll be a good fit for you. So I'd like to pay you for an hour of your time to ask you a few questions to see if maybe you're a good fit. Now, how does that separate me from every other advisor that ever called them? I'm paying for their time. By the way, CPAs, if you're not any CPAs in the room, perfect. My brother says, oh, we have a CPA. CPAs live and die on hourly billing, correct? Right? And so they don't have AUM fees. Their clients constantly complain every time they get a bill. And so when I come and I say, hey, listen, I will pay you for an hour of your time, I'm not just unlike every other advisor, I'm unlike anyone who's ever called their office. Every other person wants their time for free. So their hourly fee is whatever it is. $200, $300, $400. Perfect. Who do I make the check payable? Mr. CPA, Mrs. CPA. I show up in their office on my scheduled time. I set the check down first and foremost, and I say, hey, here's for the hour of your time. I really appreciate you getting me on your calendar. Again, now I'm unlike anyone else. What do I then do in that meeting? I talk about their favorite subject, which is, themselves, right? So I have a list of questions I send them in advance. Hey, here's 10 things I want to know about your practice. What are your ideal clients? Who do you decide goes on extension or not? I have these questions I go through. And then magically, that takes half of the allotted hour. Magically, that's how I planned it. So we get to the end of 30 minutes, I've taken detailed notes. I say, wow, I really appreciate this. If you don't mind, I want to spend just a second to explain to you what happens when somebody comes to our office. And then I walk through our prospect process so they know. And I say, great, do you mind if every few months I called you and paid for an hour of your time to go over any kind of tax questions I have? Again, their mind is blown and they're ecstatic. Most of the accountants won't take the check, by the way. They're just so honored at the professional courtesy that they don't take the check, but that's beside the point. Okay, so back to your grind question. Fridays were my grind day. I feel like I earned Fridays off once I hit $1 million of production. That said, you should never be working weekends no matter where you are in your career. If you're a burnt out advisor, you're not doing a good job for your clients. You're just not. Now, I take it to extreme. Right, only working 100 days a year, that's pretty far on the extreme. Sometimes I just like to see how far I can go on things, but you've got to earn that spot. Please.
How do you handle if people who may not meet your revenue requirements at a certain point in time
So the question is clients or prospects that don't fit your niche now but may someday. My personal threshold is 36 months. If you're not going to hit our revenue minimums in 36 months, call me when you will. Now, on the one hand, you might say, geez, well, Jarvis can do that because he's netting $1 million a year. That's how I got to this point. We always think when I get to this point, then I'll graduate clients. When I get to this point, then I'll charge the fees that I need. You won't get to that point without. Now, there's other ways, depending on your niche. You could say, great, I'll just charge you a planning fee, and we can meet on a regular basis. There's ways to handle that. But there's so many clients. Dustin talked about this. There's so many clients available. There are so many people retiring or whatever your niche is. There's not a need to go outside your niche. There's just not. All right, let me find this remote. There's a presentation in here somewhere. I'm all about action items. If you listen to the podcast, we always end with action items. This goes back to the calendar, and you need to have blocks in your calendar when you do things. What a lot of us do is we just go into pure reactive mode, and we just do whatever fire is the biggest, whatever bell is the loudest, whatever alert chirps the most. So I need to have designated dates and times where I do activities, and I only do those activities. So when I'm in Surge, I only do client meetings. When I'm in Prospect Day, I only prospect, and anything else that comes up has to wait until the next allotted time. And it just has to. And it feels like the ABC exercise. It feels silly. It feels like I can't make a difference. It makes an incredible difference. Okay, we did the ABC test. Oh, quick thing on teams. Team members are this incredible source of interruptions. They just are, because you're the easy button. You have the answer to every question, or you can get the answer to every question, or you can pretend like you have the answer to every question. Whatever it is, you are the easy button. In my office, we call it ringing the gong. I always imagine like an 8-foot gong, like in the movies, and a big gong thing. I want to get one. I'm just too cheap to buy one. In our team, we call it ringing the gong. As soon as you do that, and studies have shown, the book Deep Work shows that it takes up to 4 hours to get into a state of peak productivity. And so every time you get one of those alerts, it's costing you an enormous amount of time. So my team cannot alert me unless the building is on fire, or the SEC or offender is in the lobby. That's it. Maybe not the first one. The first one is call the attorney's office. My team cannot interrupt me. So every morning, Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we have a 9 a.m. stand-up meeting. And we just have a rolling document where their questions for me go, and my questions for them. See, if your team's interrupting, anything that's interrupting you is killing your productivity. It absolutely is. So it feels like, I'm being responsive to my team. I'm being responsive to clients. But let's run through this scenario. Client calls your office. Hey, this is Matt's top client. Can I talk to Matt? What do most offices say at that point? Let me see if he's available. What does that really mean? Let me see if he's available. Let me see if you're important enough for him to talk to. They know if I'm available. What are they going to walk down? I wonder if he came in today, They're telling the client, let me see if you're important enough for him to stop whatever he's doing right now. Let's say it's my top client. Let's say I was just playing office. Yeah, I'll talk to Dave and Sue. Dave and Sue, what's up? Oh, yeah, we had a question from our CPA about that Roth conversion you did last year. Oh, crap, Roth conversion we did last year. So I'm quickly typing away. I'm trying to stall. I'm not on my toes, this whole thing. It's a bad client experience. Counter that to top client calls in, hey, this is Matt's top client. Is Matt available? Matt's taking care of other clients right now. Is there something I, calling, can help you with? Half the time there is. Half the time it's, I wanted to change my monthly distribution. Great news, I can send you the form for that. Half the time it's not. No, I've got a question only Matt can answer. Perfect. If this is urgent, I'll have him get a hold of you this afternoon. Otherwise, I'd love to have him call you tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. Now we're not playing phone tag. Is that okay with you? That's great. Perfect. Matthew will call you at exactly 3 p.m. What can I tell him it's regarding? I want to change my monthly distribution. Great news, I can fix that. Do you still want to meet with Matthew? If they say yes, they do, perfect. At exactly 3 p.m., what do I have? I have all their stuff pulled up. I'm ready for that conversation, and I'm ready to deliver an ultimate client experience. So while it feels like I'm being snooty or I'm drawing a line or I'm creating this artificial scarcity, what I'm doing is providing a better client experience. Same goes for your team. When your team walks in and they say, hey, Matt, I got this quick question about whatever. All right, what is that thing, and what did we decide on that? And let me pull up that client file. Versus if I say every morning at 9 o'clock, we're going to go through all the questions that you have, the productivity skyrockets. Okay, so your team has got to be managed effectively. No other interruptions. My partner, Mike Kishlansky, who runs his own practice in Anchorage, Alaska, he tells me he does not take a dog sled to work. I think he does. His favorite thing to do with advisors when we coach advisors is to take their cell phones from them and delete their email account from them. Amber, does that sound familiar? Amber, who was our first employee at the Perfect RIA, Micah did that for her. You should not have any kind of alerts. The only people in the world that can alert me are my wife, my kids, and Micah Shalansky. And that's it. No one else can alert me. No one else can message me. Right now, Dustin can because we're working on this. That's going to quickly go away. Sorry, Dustin. Not personal to you. That's it. Those interruptions kill so much time out of my life. No alerts. Okay, this is my favorite one. WTF is massive value. Does anybody like read the book and they're like, what the heck is this guy? Deliver massive value, DMV, that's the driver's license place. Just me. Here's massive value. Massive value is anytime you can offer clients proactive, personalized advice. Proactive, personalized advice. Now, there's a lot of great information you can send out to clients, like 27 things you need to know about the Secure Act. That's mostly noise. I always say if it's something that they could Google, it's not massive value. If it's something they heard on CNBC last night, it's not massive value. It's just more noise. And what I've then created, if I'm sending clients noise, they now have to filter everything I send them to decide if it's worth studying or not. So while I want to deliver value, I need to be very careful that I'm sending them things that they say, oh, if Jarvis sent me a letter, I've got to take a look at it, right? I've got to take some action on it. Now, these can go across the spectrum. This can be as easy as right now our office is contacting any clients with inherited IRA accounts and letting them know that the IRS changed the rules again and that we're going to have to take a required distribution this year. Now, we're still waiting for some rules to sort out there, but we're going to let them know, hey, this is something that we're looking at, and when we meet together in March during Surge, we're going to take care of that, any other questions that you have. Right? So I'm being very specific to what they need. This can vary dramatically based on your niche, and they don't have to be complicated. I've gotten carried away over the years on doing these super elaborate ones. It can be as easy as helping clients with real ID. Dustin, at Prudential, are you guys required to keep copies of driver's licenses for ID verification? Nope? Oh, okay. We do. We do for that. And so anytime we look at a client's driver's license, we see if it meets the new Real ID standard, right? The enhanced driver's licenses. And if they don't, we give them the instructions on how to do that. Or any client that's making estimated tax payments, we say, hey, listen, can we walk you through how to make those online so you're not sending a check that the IRS will lose? Has anyone, by the way, seen the pictures of the trucks of unopened mail at the IRS headquarters? You guys nobody's seen that? So the IRS has truckloads of unopened mail from the last 3 years still sitting. So when they talk about the 80,000 agents they're going to hire, and the headline is IRS is going to hire an army of 80,000 agents, most of those people are just to open the mail. Right, so this is a true story. We never want to have clients mail things to the IRS, especially estimated payment checks. So you might think, like, that's not really massive value, helping a client make an online payment. Has anyone had a client's check to the IRS get lost? A couple of us have. It's not a fun thing. So there are a lot of opportunities to deliver massive value. In my office, we do it every calendar quarter. Now, we have a $10,000 minimum fee to work with us, and so if your minimum fee is $1,000, you can't do it on that frequency. But we want to make sure every calendar quarter we're reaching out to clients and delivering some kind of value. Questions on value adds? Come on, guys. All right. This can also be as easy as a quick phone call. I love Loom videos. Please.
Is that $10,000 fee is irregardless of assets under management, correct?
The question is the $10,000 fee irregardless of assets under management fee. I do the calculation just so in my office, we only charge assets under management. Why? Because I have a lot of head trash. Not a good reason. We have head trash around planning fees. One of the great things Dustin's brought to this organization is saying, hey, you can also charge planning fees. Listen, I have head trash like everybody else. I know I'm on stage and you're sitting down. I have the same head trash, the same fears, the same concerns. The same things keep me up at night as you. So for me, it's minimum revenue to the firm per relationship is $10,000. Whether that's strictly an AUM fee or it's AUM plus planning, whatever you do is awesome. Please, sir.
Matt, do you have examples on your website of these value adds?
Question was, do I have examples of the value adds? So the book is full of examples. The hardcover edition now has several examples of the value adds that we do. Obviously, your value adds need to go with the data that you have, and of course, whatever compliance wants to work with you on, right? And every group is different on what's okay for value adds and what's not. A random thing, with my brother who runs retirement tax services, a CPA, he provides a lot of these, and he works with a big contingent of Edward Jones advisors. Which, do you guys have Edward Jones around here? Every street corner. Edward Jones approved the value add, but only if the advisor hand wrote in the data. Now try to figure that one out for me. They said, hey, you can't send this 1099 letter unless you handwrite in the data. Okay, I don't know. That's just how it is. But there are examples in the book of value adds. An example that we like to do every other year is reminding clients of their beneficiaries. Now, I would imagine that Prudential, like every firm, once a year sends a notification, here are your beneficiaries. Let me just clue you in real quick. None of your clients know what percentages are. That's not disrespect. It's really not. In fact, when you say percentage in a client meeting, you might as well say marshmallow. So next time you tell a client, hey, your account is up 7%, just assume that what they heard is your account's up 7 marshmallows. There's no disrespect. Those of us in this room, we could tell you 37% of any number. That's what we do. Clients, they don't get that. So when you say, hey, listen, each of your kids going to receive 33% of $1 million, you think that's easy math. For them, I guess Johnny's getting 33 marshmallows. But when you say, hey, Johnny's going to get $330,000 when you die, is that okay with you? They might say, yeah, Johnny's a responsible kid, he'll do great. Or they might say, holy crap, Johnny's going to get 330 grand, he's going to blow it all on Fortnite, right? Or whatever thing that he's going to do. Now we can have a planning discussion. So now I've made them aware of something they didn't know before, and we can have a discussion around that. Sometimes we get hung up on massive value when we talk to fellow advisors because we love to nerd out on this stuff, right? And we're like, hey, let's show them the projected beta on a portfolio if interest rates go to 10%. Nobody cares about that. What do they care about? How much money can I take from my nest egg this year? Am I going to run out of money? Right, that's really where it boils down to. Did that answer the question on? Cool, thanks for the question, appreciate it. Okay. I would recommend for value add action items that you're reaching out to every client this calendar quarter and letting them know what about Secure Act 2.0 applies to them. Now, this is not you becoming a tax expert, right? This could be Mr. and Mrs. Client, you have a 529 account for your grandchild. When we get together, we're going to want to chat about how that might change now that we have the ability to potentially move these into Roth IRAs, right? I already mentioned the required distributions on inherited accounts. That's obviously a major change. Any of your clients that are contributing to company retirement plans. Everyone's really excited about this employer Roth contribution that's now an option, though it will be some while before that sorts itself out. You need to warn clients, hey, listen, if your employer's putting money in a Roth account, that's a shadow tax for you. You're going to get billed for that by the IRS. No one's talking about that. They're saying, great news, you have this Roth option now. So there's so many things that I can tell a client. But again, if I send them a letter, 27 things to know about Secure 2.0, they're going to say, that's why I have you, Matt. I don't want to read this stuff. If I wanted to read this stuff, I'd work with Vanguard and not have to pay an advisor fee. Okay. Fees, we kind of talked about this already, the 0 to 3% thing. Quick note, by the way, has anybody ever thought, like, there's all this discussion on fee compression, which I think is just an absolute total myth. Because when I was downstairs at the coffee shop, the minimum tip option was 15% to pour my cup of tea. By the way, most places the minimum tip option is 20% unless you hit some like manual override button and then an alarm goes off that says you're a cheap SOB. Has anybody bought or sold a house recently? 7% on a levered asset? Do you ever think what the cash on cash commission is for real estate transactions? It's crazy. It's crazy. Fee compression is only an issue where value is absent, right? But what happens is you go into a client meeting, a prospect meeting, and you're not certain about your fee, especially if you're charging any kind of flat planning fee. If you're going to charge a flat planning fee, which I think is brilliant, that number needs to be as certain in your mind as your name is. How much do you charge? My name is Matt Jarvis. I charge $5,000. Whatever your number is, you can't go into the meeting thinking, at the end of this meeting, I'll decide what the planning fee is. People pick up on that uncertainty and they say, hey, if you're not confident about your fee, maybe you're not confident about everything else. So whatever your fee is, I need to have as much confidence in my fee as I have confidence in my name or my birth date or my social security number. I'm not giving those to clients, by the way. I did have a client once, a prospect, I met with her, and she said, Matthew, I want to know your home address. I said, well, I guess I know your home address. It was on the statements you provided me. Yeah, here's my home address. Why do you want to know my home address? And she says 2 reasons. 1, I want to drive by your house and make sure you mow your front lawn and you live in a respectable place. I said, fair enough. Honey, send the kids out, mow the lawn real quick. Pull the weeds, too. 2, she says with a smile, if you let me run out of money, I need to know where I'm going to live. So that became her joke always. She says, hey, Matt, that's fine. If we run out of money because the market's down, I'm going to come move in with you. Your fee has to be just said with absolute confidence. Same when you're meeting with a prospect, by the way. So again, while this is clear to you and I how your prospect meeting is going to end, for the prospect when they're in your office or in that Zoom meeting, in their mind it's going to end like the timeshare presentation. In fact, I literally, when I sit down with a prospect in my office, I look back to the door, and they look back at the door because I'm looking there, and I say, hey, I just want you to notice that there is no lock on this door. And they get this really puzzled look like all of you. Why would you point that out? I say, this is not a timeshare presentation. I just want you to know how this meeting's going to go. For the next hour, I'm going to answer as many questions I possibly can for you about your situation. At the end of this hour, I'm going to ask if you want us to create a one-page financial plan for you. Now, you can say yes or you can say no. Either way, I'm going to wish you a nice life, but there's nothing to sign up for. There's no check to write in my case, and we're going to do that. Is that okay with you? Right, so now I've taken the elephant out of the room. Otherwise, they're left thinking, every time I ask them a question, they're thinking, hey, is this going to back me into a corner? Are they going to trap me on this question? Like when you go to the car dealership, right? Ooh, do you care about your family's safety? Well, yeah, I do care about my family's safety. Do you want a car that's safe and reliable? Yeah, I do want a car that's safe. Okay, well, then you want this car. Please.
So, reading your book, The Prospecting Process.
Yeah.
I guess one question I would have, since a lot of us do financial planning, is how would you tweak that meeting? Because obviously, right, we're not doing a one-page financial plan for free. So there is kind of like a ask at the end of that meeting. Do you have any thoughts on how you would kind of tweak it?
Yeah, so the question was, if you are charging a financial planning fee, how does that work? My dear friend Micah Shalansky, he charges a fee for that first meeting. So if you call Micah's office and you say, hey, I want to meet with Micah, they say, cool, give us your credit card number, we'll run it for $495. Non-negotiable. That's just how it is. Now he says, hey, listen, if the value's not there, I'll refund the fee, but that's the thing. So you're just going to want to let them know that that's the outcome of this meeting. So you've got a prospect first meeting. When are you telling them that there's a fee right now?
You could say, we'll get together, make sure it's a good fit at the end of the meeting. If it is, I'll walk through with you the financial planning process and the fee associated with working together.
Yeah, and that's fine. You just have to let them know when the ask is going to come. Right? So whenever the ask is going to come, and that needs to be on when they first call your office. Hey, I'd like to schedule a time with Matthew. Perfect. You're going to love meeting with Matthew. Now, by the way, if I tell a prospect that, hey, you're going to love meeting with me, doesn't come across quite right. If your team says, hey, listen, you're going to love meeting with Matthew. He does great work for clients. It's a really compelling thing. Let me explain to you really quickly how meetings with Matthew work. He's going to sit down and meet with you for an hour. He's going to answer as many questions as he can. If you and he both think that it was worth going a little bit further, he's going to explain to you that we charge a financial planning fee. This is, by the way, where if I were in your shoes, I would throw me under the bus. I would say, hey, if you talk to Jarvis down the street, he's going to say he'll do it for free. Why? Because he thinks he can sell you at the end of that thing. This is the line I would use anytime you're up against, if they say, hey, listen, I can go down the road and get it for free. Perfect. Why do you think they're doing it for free? I don't know why they're doing it for free. Well, how do they keep the lights on then? I don't really know. I'm just going to let you know, I'm not trying to throw that guy under the bus. They're doing it for free because they're hoping they can sell you. It's kind of like the free dinner for the timeshare presentation. Address the elephant in the room. And so when you sit down with them, you let them know, hey, this is how the meeting's going to go. And at the end of the meeting, I'm going to explain to you our financial planning process, and then you can decide if you want to write us a check to go a step further or if we want to part ways as friends. So I'm always going to let them know their options. By the way, that was always their option. Right? They always had the option to say no, but by me letting them know they had the option to say no, now I'm the one empowering them. So these little things make an incredible difference. Now you might think to yourself, man, this guy Jarvis has got these really slick manipulative scripts. That's not what it's about. It's about how do I make this experience as pleasant as possible. Again, if I went to a car dealership to buy a car and they told me, hey, listen, if this car is not a good fit for you, we'll pat you on the back, you can have a free cup of coffee and we'll wish you a nice day. What is it instead? I got to be looking for the exits at all times. Did that answer the question?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions about the prospect process or fees? Please.
So you mentioned, the 10,000 minimum.
Yes.
So you do a financial plan for someone, you get 12,000 in revenue, and they don't want to renew the plan, or something happens with they've had to withdraw assets. Can you explain how? Because that's a tough conversation to say, I'm not your guy anymore because now you're not meeting that minimum. So can you explain how that conversation would play out?
Yeah, so the question is basically about graduating clients, specifically if their assets or their fee falls below your minimum. So I'm going to slice this a couple of ways, I guess. One is if the markets go down, we're not going to graduate clients because they fell below the minimum. So I'm just going to set that group aside. Otherwise, let's say they start taking out huge amounts of money, which we've all had. Right, they were going to take out 50 grand a year, now they're taking out 250 grand a year. Two issues there. One, I will never captain a sinking ship. So if I think a client is on a trajectory to run out of money, if I can't get them to turn the ship, I'm going to immediately walk away from that relationship. And I'm just going to let them know, hey, listen, I don't think what you're doing is going to work out, and I can't be here. I can't be part of this. Any Nick Murray fans? I'm an enormous Nick Murray fan. Nick Murray, by the way, once told me never to come to his conference again. He did. Alan Moore also told me that last year, but that's a different story. Nick Murray, years ago when he started doing conferences again, he's a bit of a curmudgeon. He's a lot of a curmudgeon. He had said if you attended his conference, you could send in a one-page business plan, and he would review it with you on the phone. Nick Murray was my hero at the time, still is. And so I sent him my one-page business plan, which was a lot of plain office. He emails back in his classic New York style. Me being from the West Coast, we don't say mean things to people, we just think them. He says, this is a total garbage business plan. You're a worthless financial advisor. Don't ever come to my conferences again. That was the end of Nick Murray. He was right, though, and I changed everything. Back to our thing. Nick Murray talks about, hey, I never want to be a captain of a sinking ship. And so if someone is no longer a good fit, either because they started taking a lot of money out or my practice changed, I'm doing them a disservice by keeping them as a client. Especially if I have resentment. Especially if I'm saying, oh, Sally's calling again and she's paying us $12 a year in fees. I need to graduate that client. And so the discussion goes like this. The discussion goes like, hey, listen, this year with the new year, I'm making several changes to my practice to better serve clients. And unfortunately, us working together is no longer a fit. Now, I know that's not going to come across very well. I know it feels like I'm dumping you or whatever the analogy you want to use. Great news, I found an advisor who is a really good fit. Her name's Sally. She works in the next office down the hall or down the street or wherever. And with your permission, I'll give Sally your information. She'll give you a call and she'll take really good care of you. And that's how the discussion goes. Now you can do that discussion in person, which I recommend. I do this sometimes, I do it via letter. I don't recommend that because people can get really upset about that and it can trigger complaints. And we always want to be careful that we don't create a scenario where we can trigger complaints. Now for me, I always use my kids as an excuse. So my kids are 17, 14, and 12. It worked better when they were younger because people believe this. I said, hey, listen, I want to spend more time with my kids, and I've realized I've got more clients than I can serve effectively, and so I'm reducing the number of clients I'm working with. Now that my kids are teenagers, people question that. They're like, really? You really want to spend more time with your kids? But you've got to graduate those clients. It's probably one of the hardest things to do as an advisor. Raising fees feels like the hardest thing. The actual hardest thing is graduating clients. But you're just not going to get to these kind of numbers if you're holding on to clients that aren't a good fit. You're really not. Please.
In your book, you talk about your biggest client subsidizing your poorest client, why you need to graduate clients. I think the example you gave is in your ebook. You gave clients got like $70 million. Do you discount his fee?
So the question was, your biggest clients subsidizing your smallest clients. An old friend of mine, Stephanie Bogan, she gives this example of doing a client appreciation event. And your top 10 clients putting a gold star on their name tag. And then when you do the kickoff, like Dustin did, you say, if you have a gold star at your table, would you please stand up? And those 10 clients that are your biggest clients, they stand up. And you say, would everyone give them a round of applause because really their fees are paying for this dinner tonight? Don't actually do that. Just be really clear. But think through that. Right, and the reason I use that exercise is graduating clients, as we mentioned, is really, really hard. So there's a lot of ways to slice it. You can slice it and say, I'm not giving them the service they need. You can slice it and say another advisor would be their A clients. You can slice it and say it's unethical for me to provide a client a service for $500 that I'm charging someone else $15,000 for. That $70 million client that I used to have, we graduated them to a family office because they needed things we couldn't do anymore. That was a hard discussion to have because that was a lot of revenue. That wasn't a $12 client. That was a huge revenue client.
Charged him the same amount you charge him.
That client, because I had $70 million, I was having a hard time getting my mind around charging 1.5% on $70 million. So we charged him a flat fee on that. See, I have my own head trash as well. I don't want to say I've got this all figured out. Okay, go ahead, please. We've got a couple minutes left.
Sorry, I'm not going to take them all, but maybe one.
Okay, start the timer.
Two questions. Well, one comment, another question. The comment is related to this, getting rid of people. We've started to do this a little bit, nowhere near the level that we should or could be. And I think head trash for us was like all the exceptions prevent you from doing like the no-brainer one. Like everyone in here has somebody they should graduate. And we stopped doing any of it because like there's the son's referral, and so like you have to, but there's this like no-brainer, like start somewhere. Anyways, that's my observation. Second question is about the marshmallows. When you talk about fees range from 0 to 3%, I wondered if you have the same marshmallow perspective there, or when you're talking about your AUM fee, do you quote
Okay, there's a couple things there. One on graduating clients. You get 5 exceptions per 100 clients. So if you have 200 clients, you can have 10 exceptions, right? So if you have your aunt twice removed, who's a dear friend, who was at your whatever, that's fine. You get 5 exceptions per 100. Everyone else has to graduate. The way to make that happen is to say, hey, anybody who's not graduated by June 1st, for every client who's still on, I just graduate my top client. If I don't have the conviction to graduate a client who's not a good fit, then I probably shouldn't be serving this client on the top end. Now, if that makes you sick to your stomach, just graduate those other clients. Question on the fee, do you 0 to 3%? That's marshmallows, right? I play every game to my advantage. And so when I'm talking about fees, I darn well talk in percentages. And you could say, hey, that's not a fair way to play the game. I don't know. It's a line item. Well, actually, the way I explain it is I say, Mr. and Mrs. Client, every calendar quarter, you'll see a line item on your statement that says advisory fee. Now, by the way, make sure you know exactly what it says on your statement, because they go looking for it, and it says planning fee. Make sure you're saying the right thing. Every quarter, you'll see a line item on your statement. It'll say advisory fee and a dollar amount. Mr. and Mrs. Client, you'll look at that number, and I'll look at that number. And if we both agree that the value I bring to the table is some multiple of that fee, then we'll go another calendar quarter. But if at any time you think, I don't know if that's worth the fee, then we need to have a real serious discussion, or we need to part ways as friends. Is that okay with you? Of course it's okay with them. That was already their option, right? But now I've taken control of the situation. Okay, in my last couple minutes, by the way, I'm here until tomorrow morning, so I have, I'll show you a couple last things. You have to invest heavily in personal development. These 3 numbers here, $132,000, that was how much I personally spent on personal development last year. $145,000 is the amount that Micah and I spent together. We do a lot of personal development together. $141,000 was the amount that Micah spent. So between Micah and I, now we have our own practices, but we run the Perfect RIA coaching program together. We spent $418,000 last year on personal development. This is not including time. We invest incredibly heavily in personal development. If you want to be a top-level advisor, you have to do the same. The best way to do that is to find somebody who has the practice that you want and do what they're doing. If you heard about my practice and you said that sounds terrible, I don't want a thing like that, this Jarvis guy sounds like a bum, don't follow my advice.
Personal development, is that on your personal time or is that days in office?
Question was when I do personal development. I count those as work days. I do. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, that's just how I count it. Okay, couple action items I would ask. And then, by the way, I'm here until tomorrow. And Dustin said I have permission to be out in the hallway to answer questions over lunch as long as you have. Send a picture of your Post-it note to lifestyle@theperfectria, and Amber and my team will send you some great follow-up information based on what it is that you are trying to accomplish. If you listen to the book, or excuse me, if you read the book or listen to the podcast, give it 5 stars. I really appreciate that. It makes a big difference on our rating. One last thing. Amber got me dinner reservations tonight at the Ginger downstairs. If you chat with Amber and you say, wow, this is really great, I would love to have additional coaching by Jarvis, Amber can explain to you how that works, and then you can join me for dinner tonight. I do want to share one last thing in my last minute. I'm going to skip ahead. Last year, this feels like the conference to talk about people who have passed away. Last year, a dear mentor of mine, a fellow named Tom Gow, passed away. I met Tom Gow about 10 years ago when Malcolm Gladwell wrote about him in the book, The Tipping Point. And so Tom Gow built 3 different multi-million-dollar practices and sold them. He was a phenomenal advisor, probably one of the most persuasive, technically educated advisors that ever existed. When I met Tom Gow in 2009, I had a terrible practice, but I told myself, listen, if Tom Gow can do this, I can do this. And whatever Tom Gow tells me to do, even if he told me to wear purple suits and pink underwear, and I'll let you know if he did or not, that's what I'm going to do. So when you find an advisor, not an expert, when you find an advisor that has the practice that you want, don't question what they're doing. If they say graduate your last 10 clients, graduate the last 10 clients. If they say raise your fees, raise your fees. Whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, you have to do that system that works. Again, if you liked my system, you can send an email to lifestyle@theperfectria.com. You can talk to Amber or myself. I really thank you for having me here. As I mentioned, I know my book is on the table, but I picture me 10 years ago not making any money. I picture me not being able to graduate clients, not being able to charge fees, not being able to raise my fees, right? We're all in this same journey together. We do an incredible service for clients, and the better you can do that, the more efficiently you can do that, the more people you can serve, and the bigger difference you can make in this world. So thank you so much for having me, and until next time, happy planning. Dustin, thank you.
What do we think of that? Good? All right, hey, before we go to break here, because I know sometimes we end and someone's like, oh man, I forgot to ask this question. Any final questions for Matt? Anything that popped into your head that you want to ask? Going once, twice. Ken.
Matt, there's a lot of information that you covered throughout the day. I saw people taking aggressive notes, multi-pages, right? What would you suggest as the first step in terms of taking your advice or all the things that you covered today?
Yeah, surge meetings, right? Pick days that you're not going to meet with clients. Mine were Fridays and Mondays. And some of you told me already you're doing surge meetings. You've started doing them. Has anyone done them and said, "Boy, this made my life worse"? I've been doing this for a long time. I've never seen anybody say that. So surge meetings will make the biggest difference. Yeah, and then graduate clients that aren't a good fit would be number 2.
And while I'm up here, another question I do have is, you showed the slide where it talks about you're losing money for multiple years, going through the grind. It kind of brings me back to my old days and when I started in the organization. What are some things that you did to keep going, to have faith in the fact that you're going to have a successful practice one day? And also, another thing is, when you reach a certain level of comfort, how do you continue to invest time into your personal and professional development to take it to the next level?
Yeah, how did I don't know. I think I was too stupid to quit. Yeah. Once I met Tom Gow, and he said, Jarvis, just do it this way. Then I knew, before I was just grasping in the dark, right? I was buying Peter Montoya's marketing package, and I was buying Bill Good's marketing seminar, and anything you can imagine. Any of you guys that were in practice in the early 2000s, whatever you heard of, I also had bought that. Once I found, here's an advisor that has what I want, and it doesn't have to be, by the way, that they're making $10 million and you're making $10. Whoever's at the next stage, that's who I want to spend my time with, and that's who I want to learn. I just want to say, hey, listen, how are you handling this? When a client pushes back on your planning fee, what do? Don't ask me that question. I don't charge a planning fee. Ask the question to the advisor who's charging a $10,000 planning fee, and Dustin can introduce you to him because he's a big advocate of that. Ask them, what do you do when somebody pushes back on your planning fee? So I don't like theory, I like reality. Personal development, I just always want to get better at what I do. I just always want to get better at what I do. So.
The questions that you pay for, the CPA's time, is that on your website or in the book?
There's a whole chapter in the book on how to work with centers of influence. The question was, how do I do that? Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the book.
A list of specific questions, is that in the book or on your site?
I don't know if that's in the book or that's inside the coaching program. So the coaching program has hundreds of examples from my practice.
Yeah, gang, what I would say too, as I was thinking about this and listening to Matt talk, personal development, he just touched on that again. I spend a lot of time throughout the year reading as much as I can. I would have never met Matt if Mike and I never had that conversation and I saw the book and then I read the book and then did the post and Matt reached out to me. And I think that, this hopefully will benefit not just me, but the whole organization. And I know even people outside of our organization. We have guests here that are not part of our direct firm today as well. And I would just encourage you, make that a point, whether it's reading or making connections outside of our organization to meet new people, learn from people. It will really help you with your business. And Matt, references numerous times in the book about not taking advice from people that have never done it before. Or aren't currently practicing it. That's a big one. So, any other questions before we move to break here? All right, we're gonna do.
Joe had a question. I'm just if you guys see Joe follow me out, he's gonna beat me up, I think. So if you'll watch,
Joe.
What's your thoughts on social media?
What's my thoughts on social media?
In terms of generating,
Like the bane of human existence, or? So the question was, what's my thoughts on social media? I see a lot of people celebrate their social media presence, and then when I try to get their practice numbers, they're just playing on social media all day. In fact, that's part of what got me kicked out of the XYPN conference permanently, is I just said, great, you have a gazillion Facebook followers and no clients. I don't know what you're doing. So I think that there's got to be an advisor somewhere who's built a great practice around that. I've never met them, but I'm sure they're out there. I think it's a tough space to compete in, right? So one thing I always remind myself is that Merrill Lynch, for example, they spend more money marketing in my geographical area a month than I will earn in my lifetime. Right? Am I off on that? Right? My name is never going to be on the stadium. And so if I'm trying to compete at that game, if I'm trying to beat a TikTok social media influencer or whatever those things are, that's going to be a really tough game to compete on. And there's also a big compliance issue that goes along with that. So I'm old school. If I'm not looking somebody in the eyeballs, I'm playing office. So again, I'm sure there's somebody who's going to come and correct me afterwards, and they're going to tell me they built a multi-million-dollar practice on social media. I just haven't met them yet. I'd love to. So sorry, I have a better one.
Good questions. With that being said, take pictures, post them to social media, because we want the press. All right?